Academy Startup Talk on data architecture. I am Louise and I'm the program manager at Prerequisite Ventures, and also very delighted to be your host and facilitator for today's talk. And for those of you who don't know or are not too familiar with Prerequisite Ventures yet, we are a VC investor that invest in the pre-seed and early seed stages. We've been around for quite a while and hopefully also a lot more. And we could actually just announce yesterday that we closed the second round of our new investment fund, which takes us beyond our initial target fund size of 350 million. So my colleagues are definitely on the lookout for new investment opportunities. So make sure to send us your pitch and also just in general be in contact with us. If you want to know more about how to get our attention, then I could really advise you to go into the Academy website where we have a digest on how to get our attention and how to nail fundraising on our website. So, and also in general, if you haven't checked out our new platform, we just launched it here before Christmas. There's lots of great stuff already and we're continuously adding more. It's a huge resource pool full of other startup talks and digests and tools for you to explore. So yesterday I also uploaded some content relevant to today's topic. I uploaded these 5 startup talks. I'm not going to cover them in detail today, but you can find them using the search tag sales. They're highly relevant and I really urge you to go in and explore this topic further. The speakers are really great and really delivered some high valuable content, so go check that out. We also have 2 more startup talks in the pipeline on this B2B sales track. The next one is on February 24th, where we'll actually be applying the data insights that we are collecting or learning how to collect today. So go ahead and sign up for that already. We also have on March 17th, the last part of this B2B sales track where we are talking about how to actually hire your first sales representative. That will also be, you can already sign up for that as well. However, if you're still struggling with something and you could use some one-to-one feedback, you can apply for our open door session. The next one is on March 3rd. Where you can talk to one of our investment managers or somebody else here at Prerequisite Ventures for 30 minutes. But let's see if we cannot cover most of your questions today during our live Q&A. So the Q&A works in this way that you actually submit your questions in the Q&A tab, not the chat function, but in the Q&A. And also remember to upvote your favorite questions because that way I know which ones to prioritize once we get to the Q&A. So today's agenda looks like this. I'm going to give you an introduction to the topic, just a quick one and why we feel that it's important to talk about this. Then Caragh from Hubspot is taking over and talk about capturing and storing data in Hubspot. And finally, we'll welcome Kristian Simonsen. He's the CRO of Deepdivr, which is a social media analytics and optimization platform. So while that might be a little bit more in the marketing department, he has a lot of experience and impressive history working with B2B sales for other startups like Templify and 23 and Trustpilot. So please note that we're not going to cover how to apply the insights today. We're focusing on preparing your data for the insights. So applying the insights will be on our next startup talk. Okay, so why do we feel that it's important to talk about sales? Well, if you're a B2C customer or if you're in the B2C market, then your efforts, your sales efforts actually lies mostly in the marketing department because today consumers are very well informed and actually mostly they actually help themselves right all the way down the funnel. But if you're in the B2B section, it will be a little bit different. The reason is, of course, if you're talking about the price, of course, this is true with B2C as well. If you have a really expensive product, then you're most likely going to talk more with the sales rep than if you just have like a Spotify subscription type of product. But if you're in the B2B market, especially the larger the organization that you target, the more relevant it will be to have a salesperson. Because as I just said, some of the reason is the price, but also the complexity of the decision-making process, right? So if you in the B2B market, you have a customer who is going to spend thousands, if maybe not millions, on a product or service of yours over the next couple of years, and the decision is not his or her alone, right? So they have a handful of stakeholders that they need to get on board as well. So I guess you can say that the sales cycle is longer and is also more complex. So in the B2B sales, it makes a lot of sense to talk a lot more on sales. So if we look at the traditional B2B marketing and sales funnel, which we know is not in a linear fashion in real life like this, but what happens in the B2B market is that your marketing activities are mainly focused on creating awareness and interest. And then you should target your sales activities much higher in the funnel than you would in the B2C market. It's really rare these days to find a really high quality human interaction. So, I mean, you would want to start your activities much before. And if you have the data in your CRM system, if you have really high quality data in your CRM system, then you will be able to have a much more personal experience with your potential customer. So you can not only spot a high quality lead in your CRM system and focus on the high value leads, but you can also have a really meaningful conversation with them because you know what they're looking for, what kind of pains they have. You can target them in your sales much more precisely, which is more meaningful for them and also more meaningful and time saving for you. So I guess to enable the salesperson to do this, you will need to have your data, you need to have high quality data in your CRM system, and you need to collect that all the way in the buyer journey, so all the way from awareness down to interest and all the way down to when they make a purchase, but also when they're actual customer, and you need to keep gaining data insights to sell more to them and to keep them in your business. So there's a lot of data that you can collect, and I kind of made like an overview for you. I'm not going to cover the list. You can read that on your own. I'm going to send all these recordings and slides for you afterwards. But just to kind of give you an idea that there are different categories of data that you can pick up from firmographic data about the company. So the size and the revenue, when they started, if they're a startup or if they're a big company. You would also want to know something like if you know what industry they're in, stuff like that. And you can also collect, of course, data on the person that you're actually interacting with. So that could be you know, information about what position they're in, because if you want to make a B2B sales, you need to talk to the right person, right? You need to talk to the person that has the decision-making authority. So you want to collect all these little pieces of data that you can kind of put together and make a profile of this person to also match if that's your ideal customer profile, right? So you can either send them out the door, or you can target your sales activities for this. You can also get some intent data, and with intent data, I mean that you need to look at, you know, what are the keywords they were searching for when they actually went into your website. That will indicate to you if they are searching for specific features, or if they are searching for specific pains that they need to alleviate. So also have that in mind when you get your data. Engagement data is also quite important. That can also show how the lead it is. So are they interacting a lot with your company? Then maybe you should upscale your sales. Maybe they're more ready to actually make a better purchase. And also I put in some technographic data. This is mostly about what kind of technologies are they using. So for example, if I was Hubspot, for example, I would want to know if this customer is still using a spreadsheet as a CM system, because that's an important piece of information for me to be able to sell them my system, right? So I would also want to collect information about what systems they're using, and hardware, maybe even if that's relevant. Chronographic data is basically just pointing out the changes over time. So, I mean, organizations grow just as we do. So it's also, it could be relevant to also track the difference. Are they growing a lot? Do they need more systems? You can maybe track some, their hires on LinkedIn, for example. And also other changes that could be relevant to sell your own product. You may also need to collect some custom or tailored piece of data. For example, at Prerequisite Academy, it's very relevant for me to know whether you're a founder or employee at a startup, if you're a startup consultant, or even maybe an investor, because that will give me an indication, first of all, if my marketing activities are working. Am I attracting the right people in my funnel? But also I can direct my content, the content of these startup talks and all the data, all the pieces of things we have on the website. We can target all our content to you. So if you're a B2C or a B2B market, then I can tailor that content to make it more relevant for you, right? You can also talk about that you can collect structured versus unstructured data. So structured data is pretty obvious. That is the data that you can collect through forms, or when people type in their information in various places. That could be when you scrape the internet for data that you can put in your CM system. I know that, for example, Hubspot, they automatically apply data insights from LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff like that, so that they will actually fill the CM system automatically, so I don't have to do that myself. So that would all be categorized as structured data, right? Unstructured data is more when you have a phone call with the customer, or you are doing a live demo and they're telling you stuff or feedback on their product or the experience, or any pieces of information that will help you in your sales activities. You should definitely jot down. Personally, I just did a feedback session on our new platform with a couple of founders, and I recorded the session, and afterwards I structured the data that they gave me during these feedback sessions, so that I could better improve the website, right? So you want to capture all this data, whether it's in a phone call, you jot down the notes in a log or whatever, so that you can work on this customer in a much more personalized way afterwards. Yeah, so just kind of collect should you collect all of it? Absolutely not, because you will drown in, it's way too time consuming to collect all this data on each profile. And also most of your data will just collect dust. So try to focus on what is relevant for you, while also having a little bit in mind what you will need in the nearest future, because data works in that way that you can only analyze on it when you have it, right? So try to collect the things that that gives meaning to you right now, and then have a little bit think a little bit ahead, so you can work with it in the future as well. But don't collect all of it. That will just take too much of your precious time. Yeah, so let me just see if I can move on here. Yeah, so just a little note on choosing a CRM system for your startup. Honestly, there's a lot of free tools out there, so don't fall into the trap of starting out with a spreadsheet. I know that it might be tempting because it's very convenient and fast right now, but it's also a lot of manual work to fill out and maintain, and it's not going to do you any good in the long run. So there's a lot of free tools, as I said, and a lot of the CRM systems have a freemium model where you can start out with a free version that should cover your needs right now if you're very, very early stage, and then you can also build on and buy more features as you need them. Just Google the best CRM systems. Honestly, I was thinking about, doing a map of these CRM systems now, but I think just Google them. There's lots of great guides out there. Ask around in your network what works for somebody in your network. If you want to go ahead and start with Hubspot, Pre-Seed Ventures actually has a partnership agreement, which gives you up to 90% off their pricing. I'll include the application link in the email that I will send you after this session, along with all the other links that we mentioned during the startup talk. But anyways, it's a great deal. So definitely go ahead with that if you think that HubSpot is something for you. I think, Caragh, that was a great cue to hand over the virtual microphone to you. So Caragh, I think the word is yours.
Thanks very much, Louise. Appreciate it. I'm just going to share my screen and kick off. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Super. Okay, guys. So as always, a very welcome to today's conversation, and thanks to Louise for setting the stage for the next steps in terms of discussing data architecture for a data-driven sales approach. So the focus will be very much on above. So as the time is precious, let's kick off. And yeah, let's just break the ice with the guys on the call. What did you want to be when you grew up, past tense, just to get an idea of who's on the call and what your aspirations were? The last time I did this was into a Saudi audience, and we had hip hop dancers and engineers and a whole heap of different types of activities. So let's get an idea what the Danish audience have. Any aspirations when you were younger? A lawyer? Anybody want to be a founder? Mad inventor? F1 driver? Okay, we're pretty creative. A clown? Okay, Carolyn, I hope if this doesn't work out, you could move on to that. Astrophysicist, designer. Okay, so a movie director, radio host, author. Okay, a whole heap of creative ideas to fall back on. Rock star, fantastic. There's still time, Rasmus. So just to focus on today's topic, many entrepreneurs think sales, and I've heard this being said, is a necessary evil. So let's start with this as to why I suppose entrepreneurs often avoid selling. Maybe not everybody on today's conversation, but oftentimes a lot of people will say, I've built something, people will love it, I've built it, they will come. So essentially for us, particularly in HubSpot, our sales process will boil down to numbers, e.g. data, and time, okay? So as you know, Louis said, starting a company is quite easy. There's a lot of options out there, but actually scaling the company to bring forward what we spoke on in the last conversation is quite difficult. But the good news is, if we zoom in here, there's actually a whole heap of options to choose from. So when we started HubSpot 15 years ago, there was 4 automation tools on the market. Now there's 4,000. So that's just an idea of what's available. So again, to reframe what we spoke about and kind of put to the forefront the importance of data, can anyone remind me what these 6 logos have in common, these 6 businesses? Maybe into the chat, just for those who were on the previous conversation we did, just to reiterate why these businesses are important. Does anybody remember what they have in common? B2C, very good, Mike, rock and roll. Anybody else? User-centric, fantastic, Nicholas, got that in 1. They're putting the customer at the forefront. All of these companies are under 10 years old. A lot of them have gone IPO. Dollar Shave Club was bought recently by Unilever about 3 years ago. The reason being very simple, data. They had data that Unilever wanted, and data speaks volumes in this day and age. So if you take, say, the most ridiculous example, someone may wake up in the morning, they'll wake up, say, on their Emma or their Casper mattress, they'll put on the famous Warby Parker subscription glasses, they'll listen to maybe Spotify or Amazon Music, they might feed their dog, I don't know, Chewy food is a big one at the moment in Ireland, they'll get on the Peloton if you can get them in Denmark, they'll use the Dollar Shave Club, now this is the most bizarre example, they'll put on maybe their trunk club outfit is a new one. Maybe they'll get an Uber in the future. So the main thing here is all these businesses that they're doing business with every morning are startups. They're new companies. They sell the same product as their predecessor, but they've disrupted because, as you know, Greta and Nicholas said in the chat, they've disrupted the customer experience. They're putting the customer at the forefront and they're using the data effectively to sell. So this kind of is where I feel the opportunity is for us and as founders on the call. Maybe it's not so much about marketing or sales, it's about creating these experiences using the data that you gather, capturing the data effectively and using it to provide a good customer experience, like Louise said. So I think this is really something that we can use as founders to kind of create a lighter, faster, maybe more automated experience for our prospects, our leads, our customers. And this is kind of what we're going to discuss in the next 11 minutes. Okay, so what we've got here is the old school method of the funnel, which is now, and I think this is something Kristian's going to focus on, is looking kind of like a flywheel, where the red piece in the middle is the customer. And that is essentially, you know, adapted to kind of align all areas of the business in terms of strategy and making the use of data that you gather within the attract, convert, close stages of the actual sales process, using it in a kind of a way that is very efficient and using the data effectively to do business. So the customer is no longer an output, it's the center. Okay, so again, that's just to reframe what we discussed. Anybody who's met me before, my name is Caragh. I'm working in Hubspot. I have a background, I lived in Spain for about 5 years, London for 3, and worked in 2 different startups and 2 different incubators, and now in Hubspot. So I'm passionate about helping guys like yourself and supporting, you know, growth within the startup community. So what are we talking about today? 3 simple things: the sales activity, the sales process, the sales metrics, data. Okay. So just for the guys in the call, has anyone been cold calling in the past 6 months? Just a yes or a no. Have you enjoyed this experience? Do you think this is a scalable process? Sorry, I'm missing a K in reckon. So maybe, so Mads, fair play Mads, very honest. Mads has been cap lock yes on that. How many calls a day have you been doing, Mads? Have you got ABC on the wall, always be closing? Yes, yes, very limited. Okay, so we've got a few people there that are actually familiar. So a lot of people, you know, may have received funding. They're like, okay, I'll, you know, pay for the advertising space in order to attract in the right business, to capture the lead and eventually pick up the phone and call. So we believe, you know, sales data is like not being used as effectively as it could be, okay? We believe that it's very important early days to save the time, save the money by using the data well. So again, have a look at this, take it, have a look at it later, but the sales process is key in order to understand where to capture the data and then how to use it as next steps. We mentioned on the last conversation, buyer personas are the foundation of, you know, where to begin with your journey from capturing the right person and moving forward. Today, I just put an example of the different roles within my business I'm working in. We've got Brian, who's our founder. What's important to him? Company growth, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value. These are all serious data points he's interested in. Yamini is more interested in sales performance, integrated experience. Kip, the CMO, marketing performance, lead gen. So everybody has different data points that are important to them. On today's conversation, I hope I'm in my team, the startup team, we're talking to the growth Garys. I hope everybody on today's conversation, you know, is thinking about new technology, is, you know, building a startup. So this is who I'm really focused on. And these are how the data points can look when you're actually building an effective journey within marketing, within sales, within customer experience. Again, this is something that we would, you know, ask you to look at with your team, the awareness stage, the consideration stage, the decision stage. There's different capture points at each of these stages, and they should be aligned effectively, dependent on what you're buying. We discussed if you're, you know, a fan of GoPro, you'll probably want to look at video. So let's just look at the key activities as a next step. So a very important point in terms of, you know, knowing where to capture the right points of data within the sales and marketing process is to analyze what you have, map out the journey, define the exit criteria for each stage. So don't move from one stage until you've completed the actual criteria of the next stage. So if you're moving from opportunity to present, to close one, to close last, what are the stages? And measure the results. How many demo conversion rates have you had? How many deal close rates? What's your average time to close? What's your average revenue per deal? So anybody on the call actually using these types of measurements for their results, or anybody want to give examples on what they do in order to measure results within their sales process? So these are a few we use in HubSpot. Conversion rates, deal to close, average time to close, productivity per rep is another one we use. So the key here is implementing a frictionless selling framework. That's a mouthful, and this is something we're going to wrap up on. So frictionless selling is really around this flywheel model, which is delivering a remarkable experience for the customer. So Kristian has put in, okay, Kristian, maybe you can focus on a few of those measurements for your conversation. But yeah, like a process that I suppose when you're thinking about business strategy really makes the process move faster as opposed to causing friction. So here's some steps, and Louise will send this on. But it's very important to enable the team, align the team, and then transform your team via learning usually. So we need to enable our teams to focus on selling. We can do this with data, but primarily we transform from this traditional idea to this frictionless sales idea. The standout ones here are having one system with automatic data entry. This is something startups don't do. They get involved with 15 different tools. Nothing's talking to each other. They outgrow them. So it's great to grow with a tool. Understand the quality of your leads. Have a systematic use of prioritization. Is it leads within the UK or is it leads within India? Enable the reps. Look at the tools. Look at the day-to-day, automate. And these are the data points here. How long does it take to complete the tasks? What time is spent connecting with customers and making sales? And quota attainment. This is something you can achieve with the use of a CRM and the use of reporting early days. The next step, align. And again, you can have a look at this after today's conversation. But just prioritize the buyer. That red circle in the middle, that customer is at the forefront. So we discussed the last day, like people expect you to be on 365 days of a year. This is the frictionless selling process. We need people on demand. If that's a chatbot you use, I want to interact with the business 24/7. I want a simple experience. I want it easy to buy, easy to cancel, and buyer driven. The important thing is to take ownership of the customer experience and make the priority constantly course correct. Key metrics for this, the close rates, time to close. NPS is a big one. People want to give their feedback. We can use their feedback very effectively. And finally, to wrap up, transform. So the key metrics for transforming: customer retention. That used to be a bad word in HubSpot years ago when we didn't have a very good product. I think our retention was like 60%. Now we're on 97%. So this can be improved over time. What's the productivity per rep? How many meetings, how many emails are they sending? These are all aspects that you can see working effectively month on month. Are our reps happy? Are our marketing or salespeople happy? Are you happy? And then finally, transform. So again, constant performance, real-time data, coaching, playbooks, sales accountability, all of this leads to success. So just to wrap up, everybody, the journey, e.g., how do you use the data? This is an example of a slide I presented. I'll have to take this off for the publication, but at the last Hubspot for X is what we call our team. These are the metrics that I found important in order to drive incremental growth within my business, to ask for more money, to get more headcount. So yeah, you've got customer dollar retention down at the left. Here is an important one. I checked that out. Revenue retention, churn, scary word as well. But yeah, the amount of deals closed, the MRR, all of these are very important data points we use. A tip, use a matrix that defines the information needed from the potential buyer. A lot of people would use GPCT. If anybody's used it, might be worth checking it out. And yeah, just to wrap up, when you have the data points, this is what you can do. Here's the lead intelligence of Caitlin Das. This is what she's doing. These are the pages she's looking at. This is how she's interacted with her team. These are the tasks I have open. Who's Elon Musk? This is how, you know, we interact with him and do business. And this is what you can achieve when you've actually got this model adapted effectively with your data points. And I think this is something they're going to discuss on the next Pre-Seed Venture Academy conversation. But yeah, you can structure your pipeline, manage the pipeline, and make decisions that are metric driven in terms of sales. So I understand how many deals are coming in per month, what is the year-on-year growth of my startup, how I can scale, what money is in discovery versus negotiation versus our favorite closed one. There's lots of ways that you can use your data to fuel better sales and marketing and service initiatives. Scheduling, sequences, and scaling through automation. So yeah, what I would say is take the idea we discussed today. This is something I believe how we can win with. If it's the flywheel, the buyer persona, whatever you think was useful, anything that wasn't, leave it here. I think there's a few exciting things we can work on in order to scale the business. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Caragh. That was really nice. As I said before, I will include the presentation also in the email I will send out, and it will also be available on demand on our website, so you can go through Caragh's slides in more detail. It was a little bit quick with all the slides. There's so much great information on them, so we'll look forward to cover them in more detail. So, Kristian?
Yes, thank you, Louise. Let me just find my slides here. There we go. And there, and there. And thank you, Caragh. Very quick introduction. I'm from Deepdivr. We are a small startup here from Denmark, Copenhagen, and we have great investors in pre-seed. So that's really nice. We're also very happy users of Hubspot. So thank you, Caragh, for making that, or tell Brian that he's made a really nice product. I've been using Hubspot actually both at 23 and at Deepdivr, and I've been really happy with a lot of things in that. So big kudos. Yeah, as said, we are 9 people, so we are just on the way. I joined in May last year, so I've been around for 8-9 months or something like that. And yeah, basically I have a long career in sales. I've been doing all kind of things within sales. As Louisa said, I've been around, it seems, especially when I put it up like this. Started my career selling newspapers, the really tough job of cold calling. Caragh explained, that's how you start there, and then you get more customers who has churned or something like that. Then when I joined in a market stage, I also started selling software as a service for the first time. And I've been really lucky to be part of some really cool startups, Trustpilot, Falcon, Simplify, 23, and Deepdivr. And I've been part of the journey. I think it's really interesting, the starting part of a company and figuring out what the culture is, and of course also how you go to market and all the things that you can really figure out how you get to the scale point. So that's where we're at with Deepdivr. It's also the first time I'm a chief revenue officer. I've been head of sales at 23 and Simplify beforehand, but this is the first time I really get to be even a bigger part of the culture. What we do is basically, we monitor what's happening with your social media campaigns. We help you optimize them, and we help you report. I am the sales director, so I should make sure that everybody knows at the call. I know probably not a lot of you will find this very interesting. I think you're a bit too early for something like Deepdivr, but now you know. When I start in a company, I kind of take 5 steps every time. I create a sales methodology that everybody works with. So here at Deepdivr, we have a very trial upfront way of selling. So we create a business case for any of the customers that wants to buy our product, so that we make sure they understand exactly the value they get out of our product. It's also because we mostly sell to enterprise, so this is a bit complex, and anybody who works in an enterprise needs to present a business case. So we just make it easy for them. We remove the friction, as Caragh would have said. The second thing I do is I build a strong foundation of unified account data. And this is very important. It's unified. So I very carefully decide which data points that needs to be there in my CRM system. And I make sure that they're there for all the different accounts that we are working with. And again, also, if there's ways to automate getting access to this data, of course, I'll look into finding those so that the data is up to date. As Louisa said, it's very important that you have up-to-date data to work out from. Then I look into understanding how to engage with the right accounts. So that's very much the inbound way, webinars, content, etc. And then getting engagement from the right people. So when I talk about accounts, it's mostly, so if we are selling to enterprise, we need to make content that is relevant to enterprises. And then we look at who is it within those accounts that we want to talk to. So that would be, in our case, the traffic managers or the growth team or the CMO of Hubspot, for example, would be very interesting to talk to. And then when we get to that, we start making play cadences. It's called sequences within Hubspot, and basically help deal nurture. So this is basically your sales team doing inbound in a way. They understand what kind of content that will resonate and create value for the companies that we talk to. Yes. I really like data because it makes it a lot easier. And Josh Brown, I'm a big fan of his. He had this post the other day on LinkedIn, and he said, okay, sales activity ranked the closest furthest to revenue. So a lot of companies, they start out with just calling completely random companies from the yellow pages. And that is really the toughest way you can ever get to make business. The easiest is to call someone you just demoed a few months ago. Maybe you ask a customer who's buying if they want some price with what they're buying. Or maybe you want to call a churn customer. Maybe the other solution that they thought were great wasn't so great. And there's actually a quite high chance that you can convince them to come back, and so forth. So this is one of the reasons why you want to have great data within your CRM, so that you can easily pull out these and you can find the customers that are most relevant. Another thing is that not all customers are created equal. So some customers are much better than others. I like to look at 3 things. I'm a bit like Brian, I guess. I look at the customer acquisition costs, I look at customer lifetime value, and I look at time. Of course, we don't know this. I've been at Deepdivr for 8 months, and we've been around for 3 years. So we do not know our customer lifetime value, but we need to give an educated guess on it, on each and every kind of account group. How and what can we expect from them to come back? When we know that, it's much easier to also say what we want to invest to get them, so the customer acquisition cost. And the third parameter here is time. So if I call a governmental institution, it will probably take me longer to get them to buy than if I call someone like Hubspot, where they are actually willing and wanting to do things better and faster. So it's very important to think of these. Time is also something you can think in, like, okay, is this something that is very relevant to this company, or is it less relevant? Is it something that is a fire right now? Their house is burning and they need to find a solution to stop the fire, or is it something where they're going to build a pool outside? I mean, it's very different, and the decision time will be very different. When you have data, then you use it to structure it up. This is a very cool example from a company called Affinio. So they do affinity scores. This is actually the followers on Twitter of Oakley. And what you can see is there's certain people that remind of each other. So they follow the same people and so forth. So you can see the snowboarders and skiers, they're very isolated because they look after all the other snowboarders, skiers, where they can get their inspirations and so forth. You need to do exactly the same. You need to understand who are the people that are buying a product. You need to figure out how they group together. What are the things that makes them look together? And you can use different sales data to do this. So these are some of the ones that Louise also went through. Technographics. I didn't call it company graphics. Thermographics. I call it company graphics. It's the same thing. But yeah. And of course, figure out what is important for you. For Deepdivr, it could be how many active ads do they have running on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. It could be how much political spend they have on Facebook and Instagram. It could be if they're using Hubspot, because I know that if they're using Hubspot, they probably have some kind of an inbound strategy. So they're probably using ads to drive people to the homepage. And it could be how many active social channels they have, because the more they have, the more complexity in doing reporting they would have, and also the more places they would need to go to figure out where they should spend their money and how they should spend their money on advertising. We also have activities. I think activities are extremely important and something that is often forgotten. So if somebody picked up the call and talked for 10 minutes, they're much more inclined to pick up the phone and talk another time. So that will automatically put someone in front of someone you called and they talk with you for 20 seconds, because that just meant they said no and I don't want to talk to you, or this is not relevant, or whatever it might be. If somebody actually took the time to have a meeting with you, again, that qualifies them quite highly, and someone we should keep in loop with, making sure that we meet them again and show them the new updates to our systems and so forth. So there's a lot of different things we can look at. We can look at engagement time. I think that's a very strong and precise way of seeing someone is interested. And we can find that different places. When we look at, for example, a white paper, we can have it as a PDF, or we can use a system like Folion, where they will actually show you how long time people spend on your white papers, so that you have an understanding if they actually found it interesting and how interested they are in this area right now. White papers can also be used to get a step before people actually taking decisions. So at Template.fi, we would create white papers about how you do a migration of Microsoft Office to Microsoft Office 365, because we knew that when people started planning out their Microsoft Office 365 migration, they would also have to think about the templates, and they would need to find a new way to have templates, because you could not do it the same way you would have been doing before. In the same way, we also created a guide for how to do a rebrand, because again, if you're rebranding a company, then you need to get new templates out to everybody in your company, and you need them to use the new branding and the new way of the brand wants to be. So if you don't have a smart way of getting your materials out, well, then people will just keep on using the stuff they had before. So those are great reasons to start a conversation about Template.fi. It could be other things that you might be looking at. So that is also what I call trigger events. It might be new people joining in. It might be open jobs. It might be people going out to the market saying, okay, we've been very stationary and now we want to do a lot of digital. Well, that's a good event to start a conversation on. And then we have funnel movements. If someone moves down the funnel, of course, we need to also use that information to take decisions. When you've agreed on which data points that are always there, the unified data that I talked about before, you start cleaning up and making sure that you have that data on all the accounts in your CRM system. This is very important. yeah, you need to define which data points you want to look at. Again, think about it, just like I said before with Deepdivr, we want to look at how many ads are they running at a given time, because that's really important to us. If they're running a lot of different ads, well, then they probably need some kind of solution to start analyzing and optimizing on it. And really just bite the sour apple and get it fixed. I know this is can seem overwhelming, especially if you are started and you're maybe on 10 people in the sales team and you haven't fixed it. Then it's a sour apple to do, but you need to get it fixed. I remember when I just joined 23, they didn't even have their customers within their CRM system. I mean, how are you then going to have a good conversation if you're calling someone who's already a customer? And it can be quite hard to understand if someone is a customer. If you have 350 customers, you don't know all of them on the backbone. So you will start calling someone who's actually already a customer. So really get this fixed, because you will also need it to do the clustering and to understand where do you do the better, where should you focus your time, and so forth. You also need to get rid of duplicates. I find that in a lot of companies that they have a lot of the same companies again and again, and also have a process. How are you going to have your data? Do you have headquarters or do you have local departments? It's a little bit annoying if you have Deloitte. There's a lot of member firms, let's say 150 or something like that around the world, and you have them as 150 different records within your same system, because then a lot of different people are going to call them from different markets or geographies, and they will get maybe different pricing or different ways of understanding what your company does, and that will just create a lot of problems later in the sales time. Yes. Missing activities, it's very important to have systems that automatically puts your calls and your meetings and so forth into the system, or if people are joining a webinar, it automatically goes into the system so that you can use this kind of information. We're using something called Gemini that is integrated together with Hubspot. So every meeting and every call is automatically put into the system. Nobody can get around it. So we always know who we've been calling, and we also know that everybody who is called will go into be in the CRM system. So we're not calling someone who's not there, so that we actually don't know that has happened. Missing deals, again, very important. Some people might add the deal in the last minute. You can see this if their time from opportunity created to opportunity one is very short. I remember my old boss at Templify, Kristian, he would always, I think he had like an average time to close of 6 days or something like that, because he always put in the deal the very last second when the contract was actually sent, and he just needed it to get signed. And that is a really big missing information, because you don't know the time it actually took to win that deal. And you need to know that, because else you cannot prioritize how you spend your time and on who you're spending your time. Yes, very important. Then you need to figure out, are there any deal breakers? So there are deal breakers in the world. For example, in Switzerland, you need to have your data on your own devices. So if you're selling a cloud solution, if you're in banking at least, so if you're selling a cloud solution, you can't really sell it to the Swiss banks. Okay, that's good to know, because then you're not starting some kind of sales dialogue. I mean, as Caragh said, it doesn't even take 7 emails. It might take 25 activities before you book a meeting. So you already spend a lot of time and money on getting the meeting in place. Maybe you even have the meeting, they like the solution, and then they go to IT and they say, hey, we cannot do this. We need to have it on our own database. And I mean, then that's just waste of time and waste of money. So you need to figure out in your company, are there any deal breakers that you need to be aware of? That could also be like military, where they have higher security measures. You need to know about this so you don't start those kind of conversations. Yes. Then I like ABM a lot, account-based marketing. I like it also from the point of view that some companies are just created different, as I started out saying. So some will take you a lot longer time to close, and some will take you a lot less. Some you want to invest a lot of money in because you will get a lot of money back, and you need to understand this. So that's the customer lifetime value that we're looking at. We want to get as many of the big ones in as we can get on the smallest time, basically. So this, I think, it makes a quite nice little way of thinking of it. You can also think of it like this. We have the lighthouse accounts. I would call it easier high CLV. So a very good example from Templafy could be like an accounting firm or a law firm. Deloitte, for example, or Allen & Overy, their product is paper. So of course, making sure that the paper looks as good as possible and that people within the organization can create it as fast as possible, that is very like, that is just key. So that's the house is on fire if they're using something that is slow and bad, and if people are not turning something out that is on brand, because they are known for their brand and for the consistency like that. So that's easier high CLV because there will also be a lot of people. In Deloitte, there are 350,000 people working within Microsoft Office around 5 to 6 hours a day. So they really need a solution like Templafy. So why not call them as the first company to call? I would at least. So how much does the time to actually land a global enterprise like that? Well, that will take you 250 to 750 hours for one account. So you also need to be aware of this. So you don't spread your salespeople too thin. If your salespeople only have 100 hours to cover at Deloitte or an Allen & Overy, they will never win it. They will just fall too short on it. And it will just be there within your pipeline, filling up space, filling up forecast that are never going to happen. So make sure that they can actually invest the time that it takes to make a deal like that. Also, when you have big accounts like this, then you need to make an account plan. You need to figure out which partners you need to involve. You need to understand how much money you're going to invest into account-based marketing. Because there are great measures and ways to make sure that anybody within Deloitte or anybody who is working in branding or marketing gets to see a Templafy logo every day. There are ways to do it, but how much do you want to invest on doing that? How much money are you going to put into this? That's the customer acquisition cost. And again, if you have a smaller account, let's say a tier 2 account, how much can you expect from that? At 23, that would be something around 3,000 euros in MRR. Okay, and they're going to stay what, 40 to 50 months? Okay, so how much can we then spend to land it? Because we know we're gonna get this money back. How does it look? What kind of company is it? How many contacts do we need to be involved with before we can make a decision? Do we need to involve partners, or do we need to talk to their partners because they are maybe partner driven in the way they take decisions? So all this kind of stuff you need to understand. And tier 3 or 4 or 5, that might be a lot of automation. It might be only online meetings. It might only be that you want to spend a certain small amount of money getting them in. You know, it has to be a lot of automation in there to get that to work out. Yes, I found a nice little laser here. That's because I want laser focus when you're in sales. I think just in general, there's too little focus on what actually matters. And you really need to just have it as a high priority focus in things. When you have a salesperson, they will be selling 75% of the time if you have removed everything friction from their daily work. So that's 1,350 hours a year that they can actually do selling. So if you do a bit calculation, if you have the big account like Deloitte, okay, someone who's working at Deloitte account will already have lost maybe 750 hours of their time. That's half of their time. So they can work on one other big lighthouse account, or they can work on some smaller ones that requires less work. But really make up this, because you need to make sure that you're not just, not focusing the time on the best and most important deals that are out there. Another way to really do this is following the predictable revenue model. I think this is a great slide because there's a lot of different moving objects when you're doing sales. So there's some qualifying. You need to figure out which accounts you want to do. I know you had a session about ICPs earlier. So you need to make sure that you have very structured and strict guidelines for how an ideal customer profile looks like. That's also part of the data. Then you figure out how much is within that ICP. What is the total addressable market? Then you start building the lists that you want to, who you want to be in contact with. Then you do the pre-qualifiers, making sure that you know, okay, if let's say Deepdivr were to attack one of the big accounting firms, we would of course look at who is the most active with ads. So we would look at that as the first measure to say, okay, which one should we reach out to first? Or 23, we would look at how many videos do they have on YouTube? If they have 5,000 videos on YouTube, they have a huge investment already in videos. Then that value alone is worth maybe 10, maybe 100 million kroner. That is already making a decision to buy into a video asset management solution much smaller, and something that you should really, really do. So stuff like that is really important to get in there when you're building your list and doing your enrichment. Then you need to understand, okay, who's doing the cold calls? Who's doing the discovery demo books? Is that a SDR, a BDR, or is it something that you should have with the account executive? Again, that depends on how complex your selling is. If you are doing the big enterprise deals, I would definitely recommend you to have someone doing this in the team, so that the person who's then dealing with it afterwards actually only deals with that and has their full focus on the funnel, not on booking meetings and doing the discovery. And again, yeah, then you have the later part, and you might even have lawyers working for the sales team. You might have a marketing person or a brand person who can build presentations for them, and like everything you can do to make sure that they spend the time on what really matters. That's good, engaging conversations and engaging the lead that you have. And then of course you move on to close, and you make sure that again you have a good delivery of information to your customer success team. Yes. So very quickly summed up, get the data in there, start making an understanding. What is the customer acquisition cost looking like for each of your clusters? What is the expected customer lifetime value? How long does it take in average for that cluster to close? Make sure that you have the data in there so that that cluster is actually correct, biting the sour apple. Make sure to find the companies that are more interesting. Again, they're not all created equal. Maybe even sometimes you will say, okay, I need to have my CEO in on the demo call, or maybe my CTO needs also to be involved, whatever it might be. Sometimes you need to invest more because the company is just worth so much more. Tier out your accounts so you know, okay, which one is the most interesting, how much time can we spend on them. Make sure that the salespeople only have the accounts that they can actually fight over, so that they're not just wasting accounts that they're not really working. And then use all the good stuff that Aaron Russ have learned us from predictable revenue in professionalizing and specializing your sales department. Yes, I think that's it, Louise.
Right. All right. Thank you, Kristian. Maybe you could unshare your screen.
Yeah, I'll see if I can do that.
All right. So we don't have a lot of time, but I see that there are not so many questions in the Q&A. Most of them has been answered during when we have been talking. So I don't know if you guys are too confused to have more questions, or if we have answered all of your questions, but now is the time to pop in some more questions if you have any, because we have 3 minutes left. But I actually have one question for you, Kristian. Maybe if you could, with all your experience on also from the social media platforms, is there any way to kind of like scrape some more information on how do you scrape information for your customers that is not where they fill out their own forms on a website or something like that? How do you actually get more data?
Well, I work with an agency called Evergrowth. So they do a lot of the scraping for me, but there are a lot of different databases you can use to get information, different types of information. That could be like, do this company have Hubspot installed, or is the form coming from Hubspot, or is it a Marketo form, or is it a Salesforce form, or whatever it might be. That kind of information is quite easy to get out from the web page. You can also there tell if what kind of CMS system they're using, what kind of tracking do they have, all that kind of stuff. So that kind of information you can get from certain databases. But yeah, I've just outsourced it to an agency to make sure that we're always doing it the best way, and because they also have a much better understanding of these systems.
Okay, all right, thank you. We have a question here. How do you deal with multiple stakeholders inside the B2B buyer organization? How do you control such a sales process? Kristian, would you start with that too? And then we'll ask Caragh.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it's very good to understand how your product is going to be like relatable to the different decision makers within an organization. I don't think you can sell B2B today without it being to multiple different stakeholders. I think the average is 4. But if you're selling something like Templify, it would be more like 150 or something like that. The way I normally did it is understanding, okay, is it for who is this going to be a painkiller, and for who is this going to be a vitamin? So for example, for the brand director, it's a painkiller because nobody's using the right brand. They're using different templates that might from last year or something like that. So they want definitely everybody to get Templify so that they can fix this issue. But for IT, it's something else, and for maybe the CMO, it's something else, because that's more about productivity. So it's more like a vitamin. So you need to talk about, okay, everybody can all of a sudden do better presentations with less cluttered slides. So that's another conversation and another kind of type of pitch you're going to do to that person. In general, I think it's good to just involve as many as possible. The more you involve, the higher the chances of it being successful. But of course, understanding and having the meetings maybe separate from time to time, so that you don't have multiple different stakeholders in the same meeting that have different agendas, because you're never going to really please all of them at the same time. Yeah, and then I've been using webinars a lot inside the sales, and also videos for that sake, where I'll have a webinar for the organization that they can join in on, so that they can get the demo, all of them, and ask questions and so forward, or have a video created for the organization so that they can kind of like look at it when they have time for it, and everybody can get up to speed.
Cool, thank you. Caragh, you sent me at some point of time like an overview of some of the tools that you can also use. Do you have a more elaborate one than the one you sent me, or should I just build upon that and send it out to them? Because we have a question about it, if we could map out the tools and
yeah, we have the MarTech, so it's a short list of the best sales marketing tools.
Yeah, exactly.
An update, so I'll send it to you, no problem.
All right, cool. I'll include that in email. We need to wrap up for today. Time flies. I'll just share my screen real quick because I have a few things left here. So really, thank you for joining today. Remember to sign up for our open door session if you feel more a need to get some feedback on your startup. The next session is March 3rd, but the application deadline is February 24th. And then our next startup talk is already in 2 weeks on February 24th, where we'll be applying these data insights. So now you get to work with your data, and then we'll have some speakers on board and tell exactly what they're doing, what is the trigger, and how they're actually applying it in their sales activities. So I hope to see you again soon, and thank you for joining us today, and have a great day.
Thank you, Louise. Have a nice day.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.